welcome to the channel. Today we're gonna pretty much talk about the hobby. Now we're gonna talk about the hobby because we've been getting a lot of interested parties asking about the videos that we are doing. They see me do the showcases like the 15mm showcase, the DBA videos. They see me doing some painting. They see me doing building terrain and stuff like that, and they're wondering what's going on. Now our channel shoots out of Malaysia, so we're in Petaling Jaya, which is basically a suburb just outside the national capital. So because of this, and because we are new, and because most of the time I think something to do with the algorithms, but we have a lot of interest locally on what we're doing. So this video attempts to answer the questions I get quite a lot. So the question they ask is two. First, what is miniature gaming? And two, how do they get in? How do they get into it? So firstly, what's miniature gaming? Quite simply, miniature gaming is, for me, the complete hobby. It's one of the few hobbies you have where you are involved in every process from the beginning until the end. So you buy the figures, and then you clean the figures, then you paint the figures, then you base the figures, and then you put the figures on the table, and more often than not the tables are built by you, so the scenery is all done by you. And then after you've had your game, you put the figures that you've painted into a shelf or store them away as part of your collection. So it's complete. It's a complete hobby. So whenever somebody new comes into this, inquires about this, I tell them that that's what miniature wargaming is. It's essentially a full hobby where you buy the figure, paint the figure, build everything around the figure, the terrain and everything, and then you play with the figure using different rule sets, and then you store and you collect the figures. You keep them as a collection. Now, wargaming can be historical, it can be science fiction, it can be fantasy, depending on what you want, what you're looking for. And also sometimes it depends on your friends, because this is one of those few games where you usually need another person to play with. I do know that there are other solo wargame rules out there, but generally it's for more than one. It's for 2, 3. But in essence, regardless whether you're doing fantasy or historical or science fiction, it's all pretty much the same. You paint, you buy, you paint, you build everything around it, the terrain and stuff. You play the game, you play the scenario, and then you start them and collect. So that, in a nutshell, is what I do here, on these videos. Of course, there are different ways to look at wargaming. You can actually play it competitively. I know a lot of folks who play competitively, and when you play it competitively, you have, to be fair, you have two forces of the same value, army value, whether it be point score or army size. Or you can play scenarios. I know some folks who play this game using scenarios. So you set up a scenario and you play a game to win the scenario or to play the scenario. And I know some folks who do replay historical scenarios. So for example, I know some folks who reenact certain key battles, and when they do that, what they do is they find the order of battle for that particular scenario. They set it up and they play it. I also know some folks who use this as a simulation, so they build the forces exactly, and they move the forces exactly the way it's done historically, and then they fight it. Of course, when you say simulating, it's usually the historical guys who do this. Okay, so that's pretty much what happens on the tabletop. And what we do is we have different rule sets that we use to help us referee the different outcomes, like what happens when one unit faces another unit. We have rules on how far things can move, and we use like a random number generator, like a die or some dice, to add some randomness to the outcome. Of course, there are games that uses just cards, like Weird. weird miniatures use just cards. But all of this is preference. And these all of these you'll find as you slowly get into the hobby. All right, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell. If you like what I just said and you want to hear more, you want me to explain a little bit more, all you gotta do is leave a comment, and I will go into this much deeper. So, for those of you who already have watched my videos, are quite curious on how to start, I always recommend starting with a figure you like. This is the advice I give to folks that come to my store. Usually, I have guys who come to my store and they start wargaming because their friends are wargaming. So 6 of them are playing perhaps Warhammer and they want to get into Warhammer, and what they do is they come here and buy some Warhammer, so they know exactly what they want to get. There are some folks who are really excited about this whole painting and hobbying thing, so what they will do is they ask me, so what would you recommend? Usually what I would do first is I would recommend painting a model. That's step 1. I mean, unfortunately, our hobby has most of our figures in our hobby is unpainted. So part of the hobby is to paint. So I would usually try to sell a figure to somebody who I'll try to sell a figure he likes or that he fancies, or I'll try to sell a figure or a game that he likes. Because at the end of the night, because it's usually at night, you're the one who's actually painting the figure, and if you are painting a figure you don't like, you probably not get it done. That's step 1. And of course, to do this, you probably need a paint set. So for those who are into this, want to get into it, I usually recommend a starter paint set. Starter paint set will probably have about like 10 different colors and something like this. So get the hobby starter, because they usually come with like a brush. I would recommend the Army Painter paint set, because it comes with a brush, so you don't have to worry about going out and get a brush. Then I would also recommend not getting too caught up in trying to paint with all the different techniques. If you've trawled the internet long enough, there are a lot of ways to paint a miniature, from different techniques to different skill levels. But for most folks that come into my store for the first time, I tell them the most important thing to do is to finish your first figure. So I don't advocate batch painting yet. So my process when I introduce a new player is to paint one figure. Just paint one. Buy a figure from the shelf, maybe a Dungeons & Dragons figure, or just a random figure that you like to sculpt, and paint one figure. If you like the process, then we can consider looking at the different games. This of course is for those who don't have any friends who are playing, because usually it's the community that leads you on, or helps you along. So for example, if you're playing if your friends are playing Warhammer, these guys will help urge you, come on, we got you to build another army. We want you to build an army that we can play with. So they'll probably help you and give you some advice. But for those who are working from a vacuum, and I know a lot of you guys are, because I'm getting a lot of messages wondering what's happening here. The idea is, the first thing, paint something that you like or something that you know. Once you've done that, once you've got your first figure out of the way, then decide whether this is for you or not. Because a lot of folks have asked me whether this is an expensive hobby. I wouldn't say it's extremely expensive, but yes, there is a lot of money involved. It's not a cheap hobby. You got to buy your paints, you got to buy your brushes, you got to buy the figures. It's not cheap. So I don't want somebody coming into my store and buying maybe a whole army, and then deciding later that, oh, I don't really like painting, and then the whole army ends up underneath their bed, only to be sold on the secondary market like 6 months later or a year later. So what I usually do, this is my process. I tell the guys to come to my store, buy a figure, paint the figure. If you like what you've done, what you painted, then consider what you want to play. The question that comes up after that usually is, are there a lot of players for this game? Which is a fair question. I mean, when you're starting out, you obviously want a game where everybody plays. But you know, if it's also a subject matter that you like, then yeah, go for it. But I also think that, you know, there's lots to be said about playing a game that you want to play. For example, if you're into let's just say fantasy, Oriental fantasy, you can choose Bushido. Bushido doesn't have that big a player base, but that should not stop you from playing Bushido. You know, get two armies. You know, you can convince somebody else to, or teach somebody else to play. You know, the biggest problem I have with people playing what everybody else is playing is usually it's peer pressure, and it's usually a subject matter that they themselves wasn't really into lah. You know, so get a game that you are interested in, and trust me, there are a lot of games out there to choose from. If you need any advice on which game to choose, find a genre that you like and work your way down the rabbit hole from there. There are tons of different kinds of games to choose from, and a lot of these are small companies. I always think that the gaming world, and miniature gaming world, is built from small companies. So I'm not in any way, you know, I'm saying that don't support the big guys, but hey, support the small guys, man. These guys usually come up with some really good games. In fact, you know, we also have sports games. You know, if you like sports simulation games, there are miniature games for that. But the idea for a miniature game is there's a miniature, or there are miniatures, and there's a place to play. So yeah, so you got your paint set, you got your miniatures. The other way to start is like paint your first figure. Then, only then, once you've done your first figure, it doesn't matter how terrible it is, don't strip it. I say don't strip it. Stripping basically means remove the color by one way or another. You know, get the first figure out of the way. If you're painting like a small warband, get the warband painted first. Once that's done, learn the rule set. Some folks would go the other route. They would go out and find the rule set to play first. Go through the rule book, choose an army that they like, and then buy the miniatures according to that. Yep, you can use that as well. You can use that method as well. The most important thing I think to take away from this video is to generally have a good time. I think a lot of times, the people who get the most out of this hobby, honestly, are people who have a good time throughout the whole process. They have a good time painting it. They have a good time playing it. They have a good time building the houses and stuff at the hills, and they have a good time collecting it. So if this or any of this is interesting to you, give it a go. You don't know what you're going to get yourself into, because trust me, when I started decades ago, I was sure what I was going to get myself into. But it is a very satisfying hobby. You will notice if you're painting, your painting will get better, your gaming will get better. In fact, if anything, it's one of those hobbies where you find yourself spending lots of long evenings or late nights, you know, with yourself, which is that's all right. So that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say when it comes to what I'm doing and how to get involved. If you've got any more questions, and I'm sure you do, don't feel afraid to just reach out. If you're not in this region, or if you're in if you're wondering whether there's something like this in your country or in your region, do a search, find out. Most game store owners I know are really nice guys. They're more than willing to help you out. Head down to find out if there's one near your place. If there is a game store near your place, excellent. Go and say hi to the store and make friends. Ask him advice. If there isn't, and I know some regions here, some countries don't have game stores. If you don't, then what you do is use YouTube. YouTube has been excellent for the hobby. The amount of videos that come out, the different, there are painting videos, there are game videos, review videos, lots. Go down, have a look. But don't just have a look, support, buy a rule set, start learning it. or buy some figures, start painting. Unfortunately, that's the only way to get into the hobby. Only few ways to get into the hobby. So that's basically it. That's it. Once you've got that under your belt, everything else is just an accumulation of where you want to go from there. I know some folks who start out wanting to game, but end up becoming painters, and very good painters at that, because they found that's the part of the hobby they like, I know some folks who don't paint very well, but they game they love gaming. They love the rolling of dice or flipping of cards, and they love, the social event, the social interaction. If that's what you like, and that's the joy that you will get out of it, meeting new folks and stuff like that. And I also know some folks who I would like to call them the secondary gamer market because what they do is they can't paint very well, so they buy painted figures. If that's your thing, and if that's what you want to do, that's okay as well. So that's my ramble. that's my ramble for the night. If you like what you've heard, or if you like the channel, do help the channel grow. Like, subscribe. I would appreciate a comment or two. These videos take a bit of effort to do, so it's nice to wake up, and look, I've got a new comment. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I don't know whether I'm doing this without a script, of course, so I don't know whether I've covered everything. If I haven't, ask, and I'll maybe do more videos like this where I just sit down and talk to the camera. Yep, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much. Hopefully we'll get back to regular showcases and hopefully more different kinds of videos. Thanks.